Alex Solomon, welcome to the American Glutton podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a huge fan of the content you put out and your message and your whole story. And I just wanted to talk to you and hear what was the impetus for you to make the change? And did you go through a bunch of shit or did you just like find a plan and stick to it? Like, I want to know everything.
First of all, I appreciate you having me on. I've been a huge fan of yours for years. All the movies, all that stuff. It's a pleasure being here. And I appreciate you telling me that, you're a big fan of content, because I say it from a place of knowing what people need to hear, but also from a place where I know where I've been through before, because there's so much bullshit online that is just hard to sift through it. And you asked me like where I started. So at my heaviest, I was around 365, right? It's hard to exactly know what year it was, but around 18 years old, something like that, and that came about through just years of eating whatever I thought I could without any kind of consequences. Because, if you're like my mom, she bought me all the food I wanted, because
Yeah.
she's a very giving person, single mother, so here you want this, you want that, there's no limits. And I had no idea about the repercussions this food had on my body because I was a huge gamer back in the day. So I sat behind a computer, very sedentary. I was like a recluse. I hated going outside, so I just sat in front of the screen, ate probably takeout 3 times, if not more, per day, and it's like thousands of calories per meal, so. And there's one specific time where I went to the doctor, and for some reason I hated going to the doctor just because, I mean, when you're at that weight in that kind of health condition, it's never good news that a doctor's going to tell you. It's always something negative. So I avoided going to the doctor as much as I could, but I had to go to the doctor for one specific reason because I think I was joining the high school football team. I wasn't good at all. I just big body, 6'4", 365. Oh, hey, you can play. Maybe, maybe not. I couldn't play. And
You'll get in somebody's way. You
exactly,
can
that's
you're a
exactly what
good
I was there for.
obstacle. Yeah.
Exactly. So I went to the doctor because I had to get a physical done, before I could join a team. And the doctor ran on my blood test, did everything. He's like, listen, you're pre-diabetic, you got a fatty liver, high triglycerides, your blood pressure's through the roof. You're not in good shape. If you don't change something now, you will not live past 30. I don't know there's no way to know if he was right or not about the specific age.
Sure.
But there's a point in time, I feel like, in everybody's life where something has to click for whatever reason. That is the exact moment that clicked for me, where I walked out of that doctor's office and I just pictured my life in the future, just not being there, missing out on all these things that life had to offer. So I told myself, listen, I don't know how somebody loses weight. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what is what, but I'm going to try my best to lose weight so I can experience whatever life has in store for me. So that's the exact moment that it clicked for me. And afterwards, it was like a trial and error, trying to make the Lego pieces fit.
Yeah. That's amazing. There's so much complexity today. How old are you? Do you mind saying how old you are?
Now I'll be 33 in March.
33. So this is 15 years ago, about, right?
Yeah,
15 years
crazy.
ago. 15 years ago, I think it was perfectly fine for a doctor. And in fact, when I was a kid going to the doctors, I just expected that every time. Like, I relate so much to the idea of like, I don't want to go to a doctor. I know it's not good, but like,
No,
I, as long as I can take that feeling of it's not good and shove it in a closet in my mind and lock the closet door and like have it be hidden there even from me, I'm happier than having somebody say to me, hey, your condition is not good. This gets into like this weird thing where I want like to say it, if you want to be a gamer and eat fast food 3 times a day, fine. I don't want to get in your way. But when a doctor's primary concern is your health and they're looking at something that is objectively causing some problems to your health, I feel like it's probably their responsibility to say, hey, this is not good, right? And we're getting to a
yeah,
place now where like doctors are being told not to say that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that like is scary to me. And again, like I'm basically a moral relativist. Like I'm not trying to determine what is correct or incorrect for anybody. But if you're at a doctor, the doctor's job is the optimization of health, right? I mean, I think, why else are
Absolutely.
you going? So
Hopefully.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that becomes like a very slippery slope, but that's amazing that you know, I feel like it took me so many instances of that message, you know, and whether, you know, I don't have like a very firm belief in God, but if there is some universal presence that's sending me signals, it took so many banging me over the head of like people saying we're concerned about you and me
Yeah.
struggling and life being harder in literal terms with like just moving through life was physically
Mm.
difficult. And that's fucking awesome, man,
Appre
that clicked for you there.
Appreciate it, man. What was the moment for you that made it click? Because you said you went through a lot of different doctors before it actually crossed that path, that point in time where you said that we said that's it, I got to change something.
I had to get sober first because I had a bit of a substance abuse problem, and so without even thinking, like I said, like there was this compulsion in me to take these things and like actively not think about them, right? Like occlude them from my consciousness, and so like eh, you know, of like avoiding looking in a mirror in literal
Yeah.
terms, but this would be all mental stuff. Like, you know, every time I stood up, I was aware on some level that it was much harder for me to stand up than it would be for a guy who was 200 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Me at my heaviest. So that was just all like we're not thinking about that. And then there was a moment of like, oh, I have to get sober because I'm this is just no way to live. It's miserable. There's too much pain and
Yeah.
discomfort. Uh, um, it, just involved in trying to numb that pain all the time, right? I wanted to be numbed out on real serious drugs 24 hours a day. And even when I would do that, I would still experience these moments of real pain and despair, that I would then quickly try to do more drugs to cover up, and it just became mostly uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I worked on that for a while, and then I had this moment where I had a girlfriend who I cared about more than anything I'd ever cared about before, and I was still in this game of like not actively, but I'd spent the majority of my life not thinking, actively not thinking about my state and my condition, that it wasn't super present in my mind. And this guy, I had this interaction with a guy who basically held a mirror up to my face and said, "Look at yourself. You have to take a minute and look at yourself." And
Mm.
he did this, you know, because he felt that it was his duty from a religious perspective to do it, which whether you disagree with him or disagree, he felt he was doing the right thing, and I wouldn't fault him for that. But what occurred for me was, oh, I'm just through his words, I am now forced to look at myself, and in
Yeah.
doing that, I suddenly started thinking about my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and all this stuff came into view about like, you know, I would avoid doing things with her. Like she would want to go on a hike and I would just find a reason
Yeah.
not to go. She would want to go to the beach and I would find a reason not to go. She would want to go to a museum and I would find a reason. So I was actively being a non-participant in her life. And I knew that I had to seek help from her, which became the weirdest thing because that conversation, it was as though I was telling her a secret, but it, you know, it felt like a secret to me, but it was also the most obvious thing ever. Like I'm
Yeah.
500 pounds and I'm going to now tell you that because I feel like you don't know because you've never brought it up. You know what I mean? So you must
Yeah.
be blind to this thing. It was really weird, but that was the moment for me.
How did that go with that conversation with her? Was she supportive when you told her, I I'm struggling through these things. Was she supportive or kind of like accepted it, but didn't really help you out too much?
No, she was, it was as though I said, I want to go have coffee with you. And she was like, yeah, I like coffee. We can have coffee.
Mm,
It was that there was absolutely no excess significance. And I've replayed this in my mind 10 million times. And I think had she said, oh my God, thank God, I've been waiting for you to realize this and ask me for help, I think it would have freaked me out. And had she said, no, I don't want you to change, that would have freaked me out. Like, I have reanalyzed my memory of that conversation so many times. There was that she just reacted in the absolute perfect way, which was, yeah, I can help you. Sure. You want to do that? Yeah,
that's
we can
amazing.
totally do that. Yeah. And then she helped me immeasurably. And through our relationship, I think there's only been one time in the past 20 plus years where she said, hey, you got to get below this weight. And that was after we then had 4 kids, and I had to have, this was 2016. I had to have a surgery on my bicep, and I'd gotten pretty thin, really thin, thinner than I've ever been recently in 2010. And then 2012, I was just doing all the wrong things to stay thin, right? Like just
Yeah.
cardio all day long, starving myself. I was
Oh yeah.
miserable. And I was like
Been there.
white knuckling my maintenance and weight loss. And I got to the point where even the doctor, like the sports medicine doctor, was like, you're done. You don't need to lose weight. And I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Because I knew better than him.
I know better.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I still need to lose 20 pounds, right? If I want I was like 220, 12% body fat in a DEXA scan. And
Wow.
it was crazy. And and the BMI, in order to be of a normal weight, I had to be 180. And
Yeah,
this doctor was like, no, that's bullshit. You're fine. You're active. And I was doing 6 hours of cardio every day, every single day.
that's insane.
I had
How'd you manage?
a resting heart rate of 35 beats a minute. It was like he couldn't believe it. He was like, you are a specimen of health. You don't need to lose weight. And I just was like, no, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. I gotta lose 40 pounds and get to 180.
Yeah.
I I'm an actor, so I have a lot of time on my hands, and I had just finished doing a TV series for a number of years. So I was like, I don't really need to work right now. And so I just started
Right.
riding a bicycle, to the point where I got obsessed and was like going to France to ride every stage of the Tour de France, and like a maniac.
Yeah.
All the while starving myself, like intentionally under eating. It was
Mm,
not good. I get to 2012 and I go like, this sucks. I am miserable. Every day is a battle. I'm going to gain weight. And
yeah.
my wife was like, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do that. She, she wasn't like, I'm going to bake you a cake, but she was like, I love you and you can do whatever you want. And then I got up to about 400 pounds. It took a few years to get back to 400 pounds. And I had to have a surgery on my arm, and which is normally an outpatient surgery. And
Hmm.
when I went into the doctor, he was like, "Oh, we have to do this in a hospital because of your weight, because you're at risk. You're at much higher risk." And when my wife heard that, she said, listen, I don't care what the weight is, but you just have to be below the high risk weight, whatever that is. And I think it was like 350.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, oh, she does actually care about this in health terms. Like
Yeah.
she wants me healthy, and so I got to put some investment in that. And that's really the first time I started thinking about weight loss in terms of health. And that was
Mm,
2016. And I've gotten to the weight I've at now, and it's been 5 years now that I've maintained this weight, and it's not miserable. It's not
mm.
it is daily effort, but there's daily effort in eating, right? There's some effort
Absolutely.
in calling up for uh, takeout delivery. There's effort there. And so
Of course.
there's effort in maintaining this weight, but it's not the effort that I was experiencing starving myself and trying
Yeah.
to fix everything with cardio.
So let me ask you, what made it so you can now actually sustain your weight loss? What was, because you were starving yourself before, like you said, you were doing too many crazy things. That wasn't sustainable. What did you start doing that made the weight loss actually be sustainable now?
Well, I figured out a plan that worked for me. Like I've tried every, I mean, I can't say literally every, but I've tried so many plans. Keto, Atkins, macrobiotic foods, quote unquote health foods, where it's like you're not
Yeah.
eating the skin of a cucumber and somehow that's going to make you lose weight. It doesn't. And everything's organic. And then as a kid, I did all the fad diets of the 80s, like Fit for Life and the Zone and South Beach and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I had no prior to really 2016, I had no kind of education on how my body used the various foods I ate. And so
Right.
I was just like, I believed for a while I was allergic to carbohydrates. And so that if I didn't eat carbohydrates, I would lose all the weight I needed to lose. And I
Yeah.
lost a bunch of weight not eating carbohydrates.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then I started to gain weight. And I was like, I'm in ketosis. I'm pissing on a stick and it's deep purple. And I'm what's happening? How could I possibly be gaining weight? But like learning about how my body used food gave me a little bit more power to kind of construct my eating plan in a way that I was happy with it and
Yeah.
it was getting me to my goal.
I think that's so important. Like what you're doing has to make you happy, and you have to actually enjoy what you're doing, because sometimes I feel like people just create such a reliance on something that they're doing, the diet, the training plan, the exercise, whatever it is, the supplements, right? And then they think that that is sustainable. But what happens like once they can't do that? If they are not happy doing that, and then once they stop doing that, do they have a fallback plan?
Right.
What are the fundamentals that is allowing them to actually see results? And a lot of times, like even with keto, sure, it works for some people, but for a lot of people, they go back to eating carbs and they put on more weight than they lost because they have no idea what's going on. Keto was magical, so it means I have to keep doing keto. There's no fundamental understanding. And I feel like if people were to educate themselves briefly about what calories are, what are the all types of foods they can eat, instead of eliminating food, just limit foods, and actually have that fundamental knowledge that will help them actually keep the weight off in the longer perspective, because
Yeah.
people like myself, before I've tried a lot of different diets, I had no idea what I needed to do. I knew that I have to do a ton of cardio to lose weight because people that lose weight do a ton of cardio. I didn't
Right.
work out the first 2 years. I was afraid of weights. The
Yeah.
first time, the first time one of my friends back in the day, actually, he invited me to go to the gym. And I hated going to the gym because I felt so out of place. It's this huge guy, I'm obese. I'm like, people are going to start judging me. They're going to start to, say, what's he doing here? And then I just left the gym after one day. I didn't go back until maybe 2 years later, or something
Yeah.
like that. And during those 2 years, I just did cardio, never picked up a weight. And I lost weight, but I looked sickly. I looked like not in good health, so I started to actually enjoy doing certain activities. I call it like the buffet of trying out all the weights. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. Let me
Right.
try this one. Let me try that one. See what I like, see what I don't like. And slowly I started to find some kind of enjoyment in doing that, doing these exercises. And that made me happy. I wasn't relying on something crazy, but I did go through a period of a lot of guilt, specifically with food. That
Yeah.
was what people always ask me, how long did it take you to lose the weight? And I wish like the response was shorter than it is, but
Right.
in reality, it was about 4.5 years,
Yeah.
primarily because of like emotional attachments to certain foods, beating myself up for eating, I don't know, bad food, quote unquote,
Right.
and it's like a downward spiral that took me a lot of years to actually, you know, understand that I can eat certain things. certain foods, and I don't have to do tons of cardio or do a second workout in the day to kind of make up for eating something, because that's like a vicious cycle. I feel like it's very difficult to get out of.
Yeah.
I know I went off on a tangent, but that's,
No, I
I feel
love the
like,
tangent. And to your point, it's very tricky when we have these ideas in our head from experience. And so like even for me today, I'll come through the holidays where there's just I have 4 kids. I have 4 daughters and a granddaughter. There's so much baking in my house from Thanksgiving to Christmas. It's insane. And there's so much like, please taste this, Dad. And
oh yeah,
there were years where I just say, absolutely not. I don't eat that, and now I'm kind of like, no, I know I can taste that and be
oh yeah,
okay. Um, but so like I come out of the holidays and I get on the scale and I'm like, okay, I got to work a little harder right now. I got to do some fine tuning. I got to make some adjustments. My There's some part of my mind that's always like, you could just get this off in 2 days if you quit eating carbs,
oh
right?
yeah,
But the conversation is then, am I pissing out water or am I burning
hmm,
fat? What am I actually trying to do, right? And so I have to talk
yeah,
myself through that. I want to see a result on a scale still that I know is not actual fat loss versus I also know that I can come through the holidays and have a 10-pound swing, and that's not all fat gain, but there's probably a
yeah,
little bit of fat gain in there. And so it's a mess. My head becomes a mess with this. But the thing
yeah,
that's gotten me through for the last 7 years is that I have a plan that's worked, that I haven't been white knuckling, that I've been mostly trucking along with, and just getting back on that plan if I've gone off is the most important thing. It's not punishing
100%.
myself. It's not, denigrating myself. It's not, the other thing I've found is I can, if I'm watching TV or something, I can overeat a boneless, skinless chicken breast. I can eat
Oh yeah,
that, and to the point that I feel sick to my stomach. And I can overeat anything at all. I can overeat celery sticks. I can overeat all these things, which are not going to have a bad effect maybe on my adipose tissue. They're not going to increase that possibly, but I know that I have to apply that to anything because I don't feel good when I do that. So I have to
yeah,
constantly be governing myself a little bit. If I make food for 3 days and then I go, well, I'm just going to sit down and eat lunch right now out of this bowl that's really food for 3 days, I can eat the whole bowl,
oh yeah,
especially if it's delicious. If I make something that's delicious, it's easy to overeat that. And so portioning my food has become really important to me. And it doesn't mean that I'm measuring everything or weighing everything, but like I know if I know what 8 ounces of chicken looks like.
yeah,
I can easily sneak 12 in there. And I know I'm doing that too. And I have to stop myself from doing that.
yeah, 100%. And I think what's extremely important that a lot of people hide behind sometimes and may not realize to themselves is honesty with themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times people tend to blame external factors besides themselves that are creating a lack of progress or lack of accountability. And a lot of times, it pays so much to tell yourself what you're doing. Like you mentioned, the 12 ounces versus the 8 ounces. It's not a big deal, but
Right.
a lot of people will just top that off, and maybe that chicken turns into peanut butter instead. Oh, instead of 1 tablespoon, now it's 3 tablespoons. And then it's like you're telling yourself you didn't do this, but then you're not seeing progress, and you're upset at the external factors. Maybe you're carbohydrate sensitive, you start making things up, or whatever the case. You make things up, but the reality is you have to start with being honest with yourself. And this honesty just compounds the exact same way as maybe losing half a pound a week will compound to a huge change over time. This honesty on a daily basis that somebody maybe do a couple of times a day will compound in the wrong direction. And I think that honesty is extremely important, and it is all
Yeah.
mental.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're not mentally in it, and if you're if your mentality is not in the right place, physically, you will probably not reach your goal. Because if you're mentally feeling defeated, it may make you start trying different things, start reducing your calories, seeing how little calories you can get away with, and if your mentality isn't in a place where you're comfortable, where you know exactly the plan you're supposed to be sticking on, I think it's gonna be a very, very difficult ride. And that's pretty much what I struggled with myself before. My mentality was trash. Like I ate a cookie and then I didn't eat meals from breakfast to lunch the following day.
Right.
I there was a pizza joint after the gym, and my friends and I used to go to that pizza place and get a burger and fries, right? That was like our thing when we went to the gym a couple of times a month together. And if I had that burger and fries, I didn't eat the next day until probably dinner because I felt so guilty. And on top of that, I went to the gym either a second time or I did like maybe an extra hour of cardio to burn off whatever I felt like I had to burn off, and I had no idea about the idea of calories. I had no idea about what protein. I mean, I knew what protein is, but I didn't know exactly, how much protein I should be eating or roughly how much I should be eating. And these mental struggles is exactly why it took me such a long time. And
Yeah.
then it also led me to trying this diet for the next 2 weeks, that diet for the next 3 weeks, and seeing which one will work best for me because other people are doing it. It's working for them, I think. So let me try it as well, and
The
it's like a
protein,
mental struggle.
it is a mental struggle, and the protein thing is interesting. My experience was always that I figured any meat was mostly protein. So a ribeye steak is mostly protein, right? And the
Yeah.
reality, sadly, is a ribeye steak by energy is mostly fat.
Hmm.
And a hot dog is mostly fat. And I know you can get nowadays you can get a hot dog made
Yeah.
with white meat turkey and it isn't mostly
Not
fat,
back in
but
the day.
not back in the day, right? And so I had this idea, like people I would hear over and over like the benefits of protein, and I'd go, I mostly eat protein. That was not the case. My
No.
my chicken thighs, maybe chicken thighs have more protein by energy than fat, but they still have a lot of fat. And I was always
Oh
putting
yeah.
olive oil on them and stuff like that and turning it into a high fat meal. Yeah, protein, I find protein to be as magical, I think, as I'm sure keto people find fat to be.
Oh yeah.
I just think like if you actually look at how the body uses these two things, that most people would think of protein as truly more beneficial than fat, right? We need a little bit of
Yeah.
fat, but the body can get a lot more use out of protein.
Yeah. I mean, that's also one of the things I try to push out to people because it's a fact. It works. I mean, if somebody was eating 2,000 calories of a low protein diet versus versus them eating a same amount of calorie diet, but now it's a high protein, they will probably lose weight because now they're eating more protein. And this doesn't click, because protein, higher thermic effect of food. You want to make sure you're burning as much as you can. And people think that, oh, it's not that important. It's only for muscle recovery. There's so much more to this, and back in the day, there's a lot more or a lot less rather food choices. There weren't as many healthy, like wraps, hot dogs, all that kind of stuff. So your choices were very limited or a lot more limited. But now there's so many options out there that if you really want to prioritize your health and you want to actually eat food that tastes pretty decent, there's so many options out there. Even like the ice cream. I
Yeah.
absolutely love eating ice cream. Halo top. I know there's a few ones that aren't the best, but there's a lot of good options out there,
Yeah.
and I also somebody said this before. I forgot who made this quote, where I heard it from. It's failing to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
And I feel like people are looking for something other than a plan. They want something that will magically turn things over for them, make them flip that switch on. But what they need is a plan, something to follow daily. It doesn't have to be complex. It should be simple so they can actually keep themselves accountable, and I feel like once somebody creates a plan or follows something precise visually that they see they have to do, it goes from a point of, hopefully it goes from a point of, I should probably do this, or I kind of want to do this, or I'll do this later too. Instead, I'm doing this because this is the plan. And if I don't do the plan, if I don't follow the plan, I will not reach my goal. And this plan I feel like is very important. And that's what people should consider. They have to have things that they do, no matter how simple, daily, because they have to do these things. They can't just wish for progress and then be upset, at the progress they didn't reach by the things they didn't do. It
Right.
happens so many times.
Yeah. How different, if you can take a snapshot of your life at 15 when you were eating fast food 3 times a day and playing video games, how different is your life today?
I can talk about my body. I can talk about my internal health all day, but what really matters to me personally is the freedom of doing things throughout the day that a regular person does that I can do now. Not sweating profusely in a spring-ish weather when I'm carrying 2 bags of groceries from outside. Walking up the stairs and not being out of breath. Tying my shoes without thinking twice about it because I don't want to do it so much because I know I'm gonna be all blue in the face because I'm bending down.
Right.
You know, Going outside and not having to worry about what are the most amount of clothing I can wear in the darkest color so that I bring less attention to myself. I can just pull out whatever shirt fits just fine out of the closet and know that it will look just fine on me instead of sitting there or standing there for half an hour trying to find the perfect article of clothing that, is hiding me the most, and just doing regular things, putting on a seatbelt and not feeling uncomfortable in the car. People don't understand how satisfying that feeling is. Going on an airplane and knowing that you're not going to be touching the sides. You can fit just fine. You can
Yeah.
walk between people on the bus, on the subway, and not be a complete nuisance or just annoyance to them because, oh, here's another fat guy walking by me. Let me just, avoid him. And just social interactions, man. Life is just, this life is just so much better and easier because you can just do things that a lot of people I feel like take for granted that wouldn't know how it impacts them if they were overweight. And of course my health is better,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
you know
But I used to hate crowds because I would have people brushing into parts of my body
mhm.
that I feel like are not parts of my body that are, like my stomach stuck out so far, even the fat on my back stuck out so far that it would be like I'm bumping into people and they're 2 people away from me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was awful.
100%.
That kind of stuff was awful. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering about like your day to day today versus what you were doing when you were mostly sedentary, mostly a recluse, mostly eating fast food. How different is life today? Is it just that you changed your eating habits and mostly the same, or is it starkly different?
I still try to enjoy foods that I liked back in the day. I mean, as far as what I ate before, it was no control.
Right.
I'm in New York, so bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll with sausage and ketchup, and go to Dunkin' Donuts and get like a large sweet, light and sweet coffee. Easily, I don't know, 1,200 calories for breakfast. Lunch, takeout. Snacks in between, probably cookies or whatever is the most delicious thing I can find. Dinner, probably takeout. I remember one of my frequent meals for takeout was go to a pizzeria, get a rice ball, get 2 or 3 slices of pizza, and get like a hero with eggs and potatoes and sausage. Wolf that down, no problem. Repeat again the next day. Zero activity behind the computer. School was going great until I started cutting class, and then it's like, let me go back home so I can be more sedentary. And with me not liking to be around people, there was no social life. There was no social life, which means I wasn't as active around people. I feel like if you have some kind of a social life, you still are more active physically because you got to go see people. Maybe you do things together, but that wasn't me. I probably had one of the lowest, sedentary levels ever because I didn't do anything. Maybe I went to the bus, went to school, left the school early, went home and just ate everything. If I stopped by, if I saw a Subway restaurant on the way home, I got 2 footlongs. I ate it in probably 5 or 10 minutes. It was, that was like my regular occurrence. 3 Big Macs and some fries, or whatever it was. And I feel like I used to punish myself with food.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it was. It was like, I might as well do this. It tastes pretty good. There's not a crazy positive outlook on life because look at me. Might as well keep going down this path. And what's the thing that will satisfy my hunger right now, make me feel a bit better, like a little dopamine hit? It's probably something tasty. Maybe enjoy myself for 5 or 10 minutes, get that instant gratification of eating something tasty, and then be in misery until next meal. Now it's just like, I know what food fuels me. I know what food is better for me. I don't punish myself with food anymore because I've been doing this for so many years, and you know, yeah, it was about 15 years ago, but it's I don't really punish myself with food anymore, and I don't have guilt because I ate something that wasn't, you know, bad, quote unquote. If I order something, I eat it. I just know it has more calories than I probably wanted to have, but it doesn't mean that I did something wrong. It's just nutrition. And I also feel like right now, my goals have changed as I've started to work out, put on muscle, get healthier. I think everybody does, like
Yeah.
put on muscle, get jacked and tan, get strong. Now it's just like, I want to live a healthy life in the future. I want to set an example for somebody else that may be in the same spot I was. I just want to live a life that isn't filled with complications that may occur from being overweight and unhealthy. That's my personal goal now. And it's vastly different because I'm more optimistic now. And before I was a huge pessimist. Like I used to not look forward to anything. I always looked at the glass as being half empty all the time because when you're in that kind of condition and place, there's only so many things that can go through your head.
Yeah.
It's like, and also I used to compare myself with people before as well, and that used to really get me down because I felt like I wasn't capable of achieving the same success somebody else was able to achieve. That just kept pushing me down and down and down until I started to use them as inspiration instead of actually comparing myself to them. Because the more I compare myself to them, the more I start to look at my flaws and the things that I'm terrible at or that I perceive to be terrible at. But once I started seeing other people in a light of, if they can do it, well, why can't I do it? All I got to do is just work backwards, see what they're at, see where I'm at, and then see what things I can apply from their journey into my own personal life and just do the same things long enough to a point where I see success. Then at the point where it clicked for me, I started to think about things differently. I think it was a physical necessity, but it was also a mental change because from that point on, something changed mentally where I started to look at certain situations in the light of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be where I want to be, and I'm going to figure out exactly how to do it. Something changed, whereas before I had no desire, no motivation, no reason to achieve any goals. But then once that point clicked, I'm like, all right, well, somebody else has reached that goal. What can I do to somehow get to a similar goal and replicate their process? And that has been stuck with me for the last 15-ish years or so, and I still apply it to my life today. And I feel like everybody that has achieved a certain level of success in life, somebody else can do the exact same if they just work backwards and apply some of the things that work for them. It's their own personal life, and that's exactly what I do. Hopefully that answers the question. Maybe I
Yeah.
went off on a tangent again,
No,
but
no, you did perfectly. I try to think about these things for me like today versus when I first began, or even today versus when I got on the plan I'm on now, which wasn't when I first began. I first began in 2002. So that's 21 years ago. And when I first began, it was just totally different. It was a liquid diet followed by, a quote unquote health diet, where I was allowed to eat in any quantity I wanted, certain types of foods, followed by a blood type diet, followed by,
oh man.
all of that stuff. Where at, I went from 500 plus to 460 on a liquid diet, or 480 on a liquid diet, and then eating health foods, I continued to lose weight. So obviously I'm going like, this is working. Then suddenly it's like, oh no, you can lose a lot of weight if you get rid of the potatoes, right? Because those are
Oh yeah.
carbs. You're also allergic to carbs. And so it was like, okay, then I'm doing that and I lost some weight, but it kept changing. But then it got to a point where at like 400 pounds, it was like, oh no, it's not just going to fly off you anymore.
No.
Now you have to change it again. So um, but like through the course of that, doing all those things, I found that my life is incomparable now. And in the same terms you're
Yeah.
talking about, like I don't like tying my shoes is not a big deal, right?
Oh
Uh
yeah.
and even now I'll try to do shortcuts to everything because I'm so accustomed as a really fat guy to figuring out shortcuts for everything. And so like I'm gonna I'm gonna tie my shoes without bending my knees, right? And that will be less
Because I
effort.
can.
Yeah, because I can. And then I'll get lightheaded and I'll go, maybe I should have done the squat to get my shoes tied or something like that. Um, but like, yeah, I can go on an airplane. It's not an issue. I don't have to worry about seatbelt extensions.
Oh yeah.
I don't have to worry that I'm going to break every chair I sit in or every bed I get on or any of those things. But like, just my habits have changed, and I also think about how time and time again when I started, I would try to have that entire change take place in one day, right? And I would
Mm-hmm.
try to have that change occur by just the decision, I want to lose weight, I'm going to lose weight. That would be all the change I needed. And then there were other times where I would try to go, um, I don't need to totally change. All I need to do is take out one thing. I'm going to take out sugar. If I just take out
Yeah.
sugar, I'll be okay. So I had this balancing act of like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to make a complete life change tomorrow,
Yeah.
or I'm going to do as little as possible because I want the fastest route. But what I found was it really took many, many years for me to get to a place where I went, oh, I've pretty much broken that habit.
Yeah.
That compulsion is gone. Even if it kind of rears its head, I've got enough battle and munitions to kill it when it creeps
Yeah.
up on me. And I'm trucking along through life and not miserable and getting the progress I want to get. Took a long time. Like you talked about how long did it take you to lose the weight? It took about 4 years. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure even today, the other thing I keep thinking about too is like, I'm still a student. I'm still looking for ways to
Yeah.
change and improve. Whereas back
100%.
then, I just wanted it all right now. And I wanted it
Yeah.
either at the littlest cost or I wanted to make the most severe change overnight. And both of those
Yeah.
things failed for me over and over again.
Yeah, I think it fails for a lot of people. I think it's multiple factors that play a part into this. I think the most important one is that people think that decades or a decade of unhealthy habits will somehow magically be overturned in a single night or a week. That doesn't, if you take a zoomed out view over that, 10 years or 20 years, whatever, a decade of you doing something that's not benefiting you, how is that going to change on a whim? It's not going to happen, but people want these things to happen, and they may resort to these diets like the juice diets or these elimination diets, and they may lose a whole bunch of weight the first few weeks because you have to, because you're just eating less. Into those juice diets or the water fasting, whatever it is, it's not magical. But I feel like it's like the shiny object syndrome. People think that it's magical because I was at the checkout aisle on the store and this woman lost 34 pounds in 6.5 days. Let me pick up this article, do the same exact thing. And these like marketing plays a part on the people's strengths. It pulls on them. And then the people want this instant gratification and they don't look at the bigger picture. And they may lose 5, 10 pounds, maybe 20 pounds in a week. They feel great. But at what cost? At the cost of feeling like crap later on that you did something wrong, that's not sustainable for you. And I think that if more people took a zoomed out approach and consider a single pound of weight loss per week, which is probably what not a lot of people want, maybe
Right.
even half a pound. I mean, I can't tell you one person that is satisfied with right now that wants to start their weight loss journey with a single pound of weight loss. Probably very, very few, you know, but that's over 50 pounds in a year. And let's say even 25 pounds, a half a pound of weight loss. Like how many decades do some people spend trying to lose the same 20, 25, 50 pounds?
Yeah.
Because they're trying this, they're trying that, because they want that whatever thing they're doing to kind of hook onto them and become their life all of a sudden, you know. And if they just change one single thing, take out sugar or limit sugar, you know, swap out some higher calorie options for a little lower calorie options. You know, even the potatoes. I get so much shit online for saying I eat potatoes. Why are you eating
It's
potatoes?
crazy.
I'm like, I absolutely love potatoes. They're not good for you. They have starch. I'm like, yeah, I know. They're full of carbs. I'm like, absolutely. Why are you eating? But every time I tell people I eat potatoes, it's like I get so much hate online. And I feel like it comes from a place of other people telling them that you can't eat carbs or that starch is bad for you for whatever reason, you know. And it's just insane, like the idea regarding potatoes at the one of the best foods in my opinion to lose weight. I mean, but yeah, when you start putting sour cream, cheese, whole different story. But a baked potato, you know, is extremely satiating,
Yeah.
you know. And people got to look at things like, if I forgot exact numbers, but if you became 1% better today than you were yesterday, and that compounded every single day, a single 1%, I believe you would be 374, about 370% better in the course of a year. I'm probably way off. But these percentages, these little changes compound. When people try to change themselves 50% over a weekend, that is not sustainable.
Right.
But if you change a single habit for the next month or so, now that changed habit becomes your new baseline. You just do it out of habits, second nature for you. Maybe you can consider changing a second habit. You know, this half a pound, 3/4 of a pound per week, it will add up to be 30 pounds before you know it in less than a year. But that's not going to happen if you try to change everything at once, because that will usually tends to cause a lot of frustration, guilt, feeling like you're just not cut out for this. It may make you start considering, maybe I'm allergic to this, maybe I'm sensitive to this, you know, start thinking about all these different things that could possibly be an issue, when the reality is the things you're doing are just way too much.
Yeah.
You know, people want this. Mhm.
The thing, your sales pitch, which resonates with me so deeply. And again, if it's going to be very hard for somebody who is at their very first instance of going, I want to lose weight or I want to make a change. If they've not had any struggle with it, it's going to be a message I think that's lost on them. But for so many people like me, who I could easily and have in the past lost the same 50 pounds twice in a year and wound up heavier at the next January than I started the last year, and lost 50 pounds 2 different times. The idea of, you've done that, you've lost that weight over and over and over again. Let's try to figure out a plan that you can live with forever, that will
Yeah.
get you to whatever goal you want. Because this plan of like, I'm going to lose the 50 pounds really fast, if you're like me and it's failed over and over again, you just don't want to do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that, it's a miserable couple of months where you're lightheaded most of the time. You're crabby, you're antisocial. It sucks. And then the weight just comes right back, comes
Yeah.
right fucking back. And it's devastating to wake
Oh
up
yeah.
going, I got to do that again. And I'm starting in a worse place than I was last time. That's awful. And so your whole pitch is, you don't have to do that. Let's just take
Yep.
it really slow.
Exactly. And it's very difficult to get that through the heads of people that taking it slow is the right approach, because people again want this instant gratification. I have a vacation I have to go on in June. Right now it's May. I got to lose 30 pounds. And they create these like boxes for themselves. They have to hit that goal in that time period no matter what. Well, in reality, you're not going to reach that goal. I'm sorry. And then when you don't reach that goal, how shitty are you going to feel about yourself?
Right.
You're gonna feel terrible. You got to start earlier, have a plan, have accountability, and know that it's gonna probably take you 3 times at least as long as you think it's gonna take you. So triple that time, double that time, give yourself more time to actually reach that goal. Because if you compress this schedule in a short period of time, you will likely try to do things that are more drastic that will help you reach that goal in that shortened time period, and you may resort to crazy things to do it. You may starve yourself, because you got to reach that goal for whatever reason that you told yourself. And sustainability should be considered from the beginning, which is why I personally believe that meal plans are not realistic. I mean, if you follow a specific meal plan that somebody told you have to eat in order to lose your weight, you will likely feel like you have to rely on that meal plan to reach your goal and to sustain your progress. Who can eat the same food for the rest of their life or for the next, I don't know, couple of years? You can use it as a suggestion, but you should know all the kinds of foods that you could eat, and instead of, my personal belief is that you shouldn't eliminate any kind of food, especially food that you enjoy, unless perhaps if it's a trigger food that causes like a binge eating occurrence to happen. But moderation goes a long way, limitation, not elimination. When I tell people you should probably limit some of these healthy foods. Olive oil, I love olive oil, but you put a few extra tablespoons and they're going to be guessing, why am I not losing weight at the pace that I think I should be losing weight? Avocados, I love them, healthy fats, but if you're eating guac twice a week, I mean, that's probably like 1,000 or so extra calories, depending how much you can eat. I can eat a lot,
Yeah.
but limitation, not elimination. And just give yourself more time and look at sustainability as the main goal. Because if you can't see yourself doing this for the rest of your life, you probably shouldn't do it, because it's not going to be sustainable for you. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Earlier, you talked about honesty. There's a really interesting part of recovery for me, which is when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about drugs and alcohol. But one of the very early things that you do is, it says, and again, I'm not pushing the idea of God on anyone. God can be whatever you want. Like for me, God could be just any higher power, up to you. But it says, we've admitted before God and another that we are powerless to drugs and alcohol. And this idea for me has been really profound, because for a long time I didn't really apply it to food. I didn't think about food and substances in the same way at all. And I don't think of them in the exact same way, because substances for me just require abstinence, and I can't be abstinent from food. So it is different. But this idea of admitting to somebody else, me admitting that I had this problem to my wife, as of today, I look back on it and I'm like, it's like a kid who's standing covered in paint, telling their mom they made a mess of paint. There's paint all over the wall, right? Red paint. The kid's covered in red paint, and the kid's scared to tell the mom. The mom knows the kid made the mess with paint. So, but at the time, it was very much like, I have to tell you this. I have to tell you this thing. I have this problem. And that has helped me immensely, because I found, and it wasn't just a miracle thing, that by admitting to her that I had this problem, that the problem evaporated. I had to work at becoming honest, but it was helpful to have somebody else to know, like, it's very easy for me to lie to myself, to harm
Oh yeah.
myself. I have no problem really ever, like, my life on my own seems almost irrelevant to me. However, if I'm dealing with another person, my life becomes important, because I am now responsible for them to some degree. And with my wife,
Yeah.
it's been very helpful to have somebody to talk to. Do you encourage people to get accountable to others, or have somebody else to communicate with these things
Yeah.
about?
100%. I think that accountability and support goes hand in hand. And a lot of times, you may not want to be that person. That's the way that I felt. I got this. It's under my control. You don't have this. It's very difficult to do this by yourself. If it hasn't worked before, you trying to fix it, it's probably not going to work in the future. unless for some miracle it does work. But voicing what's happening is, I think, the most difficult step forward. But you got to like break that barrier of voicing what is troubling you to somebody else that may be able to help. A lot of times, no, family may not be able to help. They may just encourage your bad behavior. But if you can't at least tell to them to kind of take that first step, you know, and then talk to your friends about it. Hopefully your friends can help you out. But I think that support is extremely important, because if it's a group of people, if it's a Facebook group, if it's some people you met online in your exact position, just get it out there, because then you will tell yourself there is a problem and I'm trying to get help for it. Whereas if you kind of cover up, you're dishonest with yourself, you don't let people know that this is happening, you're going to be in the same spot probably a few years from now without any kind of substantial change. So I think that you should voice it to whoever you can. Hopefully those people can support you on your journey, keep you accountable. But maybe, I don't think relying on other people to be accountable for is a good idea, because you got to be accountable with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I read this thing that, again, I forget who said this. They said, accountability is one of the best ways of self-care, you know, and if you want to really develop self-care, like proper positive routines, get accountability from somewhere. Maybe it's a group of supporters, you know, and for me, it was my friends. You know, I have a very small friends group. They were very supportive of me. My mom, of course, I told her what's going on, but she's like, "Oh, you're healthy. You're okay. You're healthy." I'm like, "Okay." Well, she's a single mom. Here, have some money. Go get takeout. I'm like, okay, but it's not helping me, you know. And it's like, depends where you can get support from. But I think that's reaching out for help is not as a man especially. I feel like a lot of men don't want to do that because they feel like they are in absolute control. But it's not a unmanly thing to ask for help. I think it's one of the most manly things that somebody can do is reach out for help, because you can be honest with yourself and you can develop a relationship with somebody else that you will probably have for the rest of your life, you know, in my opinion. And it's
I
a very
agree.
positive thing to have another male in your life that's helping you on your journey. You know, you become more aware of your emotions. You may not be so set back by them that you have to, you know, uphold this manly standard of, you know, I have to figure out my problems by myself because I'm a man. You know, you should voice them, in my opinion.
I completely agree. You know, if I wanted to, you know, take apart or learn how to repair a car engine, I have no fucking clue how to do that. I would have to ask somebody to help me or start looking into it, right? But I wouldn't come at it from the position of like, I'm embarrassed that somebody's going to know that I don't know how to do this. And I think that that embarrassment and shame plays a big part in people not feeling super comfortable, especially men, in saying like, I require assistance or I need help or I don't
Yeah.
know what to do. That's a big deal. But I think that we can become humble and go like, I quite obviously don't know how to do this because I'm in the state that needs repair, right? And so like,
Yeah.
it's not a secret from anybody. They all know. Let's assume they all know. And they're either being very polite or they love me and they don't want to hurt my feelings or whatever it is, but they all know. And when you ask them for help, if they're not total scumbags or a loving mother who just wants to comfort her
Yeah.
kids, because I understand that too. And I don't think she's that. I'm not calling your mother a scumbag. I'm saying like it's just a different
Yeah,
energy thing. But like
of
for
course.
people that are aware of it and looking at it and going like, there shouldn't be some big surprise and like, oh my God, you don't know how to do X. You should be really embarrassed by that. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
so I think that's important too. I really liked what you said about that.
Yeah. And I found myself looking for help in other parts of my life that I could use a bit of improvement on from outside sources, mentors, coaches, stuff like that. Because I feel like, to me, that is the definition of a shortcut, essentially. You can
Yeah.
try to figure out yourself and not ask for help, or you can reach out for help and have them show you what you should possibly do. You know, it took me a long time to get to this. You know, I think it's also me not reaching out for help before was enabled by again, years of habits and just feeling a certain way, you know, like bullying in school. I experienced that a lot, you know, sitting in the back of the classroom trying to hide from everybody. I'm not going to develop into somebody who's reaching out for help when I've experienced those things before on a repeated daily basis. You know, so all these things kind of compound, and it takes a lot of effort to unravel these things into the opposite direction and start to reach out for people and have yourself be shown when so many years were spent hiding and being dishonest with yourself and trying to avoid as much attention. Even right now, I can people see me on social media making videos. I am not a social person. You know, I'm a recluse. I make these videos because it took me a long time to even press that record button. I do not like looking at myself. I do not like photos of myself. But I felt like if I want to reach as many people as I can, it is just something that I have to do. I remember very first time I started on Facebook, did a Facebook Live, went terribly awful. To hit that, it wasn't a video, it was a live video. To press that record button from never hitting that record button in my life took me 3 hours of anxiety, of sweating. My heart rate was through the roof. I stood up out of my seat probably 20 times and told myself, why are you doing this? Nobody cares about this. Nobody's going to watch you. You're stupid. You're not. Who are you? Don't do this. 3 hours. I pressed that record button. I blanked out. I forgot what I said. Never watched that video again in my life, but I did it.
Yeah.
And that started to kind of unravel the years of hiding and hating myself and not knowing that there may be somebody else out there who could possibly benefit from what I have to say. There may be somebody else out there, you know, but again, all these years of habits that don't help will not be changed in a single day. It will take repetition, you know, and you know, I'm not the perfect social media person that will tell you, oh, it's so easy, do this and this. Like, no, it'll take time. But whatever somebody may be going through, if it took them so many years of repeated actions to get to the point where they are now, it will take time, you know, and that's exactly what I experienced. And it wasn't easy and still is not easy. The pressing that record button or, you know, showing myself to people is the exact opposite of who I was back then. But just because I was that person back then doesn't mean that I couldn't change. It just took a lot of effort. It took a lot of planning. It took a mental switch that had to be practiced over and over again. Same thing as eating healthy food. You know, you may change a few things in your nutrition today. Maybe swap out, I don't know, apples instead of potato chips, you know, and then this builds up over time to the point where now you're eating more vegetables or more fruits in general. Like all these habits just compound over time. And I've applied these things in every part of my life. I used to be an all or nothing kind of person. If it didn't work, I felt terrible about myself. But now I'm like, all right, well, I did this a bit better today than it was last week. I'm getting a bit better. If I just practice this continuously, in a year, I'll be a lot better. You know, this mentality is what I've adopted for whatever reason. I don't know where it started, but maybe it was back in the day when I looked at my own health and I said to myself, you know, you have to change yourself or else you will not experience what you think you will experience decades in the future. You can't, because you're not doing the things that you have to do today in order to make that happen in the future.
Alex, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.